fresh new footage has dropped on the hotly anticipated Royal Enfield 450 Himalayan. So let's just dive straight into the footage to see what we can figure out. The first thing I pay attention to in these little hype videos that are dropped by manufacturers is not actually the motorcycle, it's who's riding the motorcycle. And the guy on this bike is CS Santosh. He's a 6-time Dakar racer. The level of riding is way up in the stratosphere here. So that needs to be kept in mind. But in saying that, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a guy like Santosh can push a bike to its maximum. What you probably get to see with Santosh in the saddle is far more of the bike's potential. You've just got to keep in mind that what you're seeing here might not also be accomplishable by the average rider. Santosh is the same height as me at 1.82 meters. He's also roughly the same weight. We're both quite wiry guys, so we can see what the bike handles like with a guy of that size. We can see the ergonomics standing up off-road are pretty decent. That looks like a fairly ergonomic stance to have on a bike when you're riding off-road. I think this will fit a wide breadth of riders because I'm not tall, I'm not short, I'm just an average size guy. For heavier blokes, it's kind of harder to tell how the suspension will hold up. So that could be something a little sneaky that Royal Enfield have done. They've put quite a light rider in. At Santosh's only 75 kilos. So it's not really testing the suspension to its limit, because a lot of Aussie blokes in particular, we tend to be a few meat pies past 75 kilos. So will it be able to cope with a bigger bloke? The jury's still out. This looks like it changes direction far easier than the 411. Now, 411 definitely handles more like an adventure bike, whereas this 450 looks like it changes direction easier and it does look lighter. Now that is a very hard thing to tell, the lightness of a bike, but just the way it's changing direction and the way it's thrown into corners as compared to the way you see a 411 ridden in promo material, this bike looks like it definitely is more agile and lighter, which are two claims that Royal Enfield are making. Next up, that goes hand in hand with the agility factor, is the suspension. Now, is the suspension coping with what's being thrown at it in this video? And I would say, yes, it is. And the suspension, which is touted to be the shower forks off the Royal Enfield Super Meteor, looks like it's coping far better. Same with the rear suspension. When you look at 411 rides, you can really see, and when I rode the bike, it really is quite squishy and a bit like riding a trampoline, particularly when you start turning up the heat and getting off-road in a serious way. Whereas this is dealing with the bumps, the jumps, and the turns far better in my eyes. Now, it's certainly not high-end suspension, you can tell that from the way it's being ridden, but it is coping with what's being thrown at it far better than the 411, which is another claim. The 450 is being claimed to be a far better off-road machine than the outgoing 411, so that's another tick alongside Royal Enfield's claims, so this is definitely encouraging.
Start it up.
The third thing that really pops is the aesthetics. This definitely is a major departure from the classic look of the Royal Enfield 411, but I don't think it's a departure in a negative way. I definitely think Royal Enfield have been able to maintain the design language. It still looks quintessentially Royal Enfield. It just looks like the 411, that classic look, reimagined for modern times. So I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to this bike. Now keep in mind, this bike actually looks pretty damn good to my eyes, given that it's a pre-production model. It's probably had no real attention put to all the fit and finish being perfect. And speaking of production quality, nothing broke off in this video. If you remember, the 411 famously in one of its very first promo videos, it went over a very small jump, and I believe it was a right-hand foot peg snapped off in the promo material, kind of showed that they weren't quite ready for the big time yet. Whereas this bike, nothing broke off. It's being ridden by a professional rider, and despite being a pre-production model, it still looks very polished. I think those are all positive signs as well. It looks like they've carried over the crash protection off the 411, so that looks great. You can strap bags to it, you can put lights on it. It also protects the motorcycle, because remember, this is more of an adventure bike than a dual sport. You need to look after that fairing because it can get expensive replacing that stuff all the time. We still haven't seen whether this has a 6-speed gearbox or not. The rumors are that it does, but we haven't got 100% confirmation. There's no way to tell in this video. It's also very difficult to tell the acceleration and the performance characteristics of the bike because no real footage was seen of it taking off or really trying to accelerate hard. It was all up to speed stuff. Acceleration and whether it actually will have that 40 horsepower and 40 plus Newton meters of torque still remains to be determined. It's a big claim by Royal Enfield, so I'm really eager to find out if that one is true. What we also don't see is this bike being ridden by an average rider off-road. That would probably show you far better how heavy and how easy this bike is to turn into corners, because a professional rider is going to make it look very light. How capable is it in average Joe's hand? Someone like me that's going to go at a snail's pace and probably fall off 10 times in the 3-minute clip. Also, what we don't see is the finished product, so stuff still can change even though this is only a few months from being released. I think a big reason this bike could be so popular is that this could be almost as capable as the 300 Rally off-road, but it has that motor that a lot of people wanted. The fact that you've got a 450 in the Himalayan, I think it really is going to satisfy a lot of people, because as I've said a lot, and you guys keep hammering as well, the market really hasn't given us a 450 single that's off-road capable, that can still sit on the highway decently well, have the comfort of an adventure bike and almost the performance of a dual sport. It's a tall order and something that's hard to accomplish, but Royal Enfield look like they're giving it their best shot. Will it meet those expectations? It's really hard to tell from the video, but I think so far it's positive. The suspension looks like it held up in that video. It's more agile looking than the 411. Quality is probably going to be better than the 411. Performance is going to be better than 411. It's just a question of how much. Do you like the aesthetic direction that they're going with? Are you encouraged by what you've seen in the video? Did you notice something that I missed? I'd really love to know, so chuck it all down below. And as always, guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one.